the thing on everyone's mind right now is whether or not NATO is going to send in any sort of ground forces. Certainly the latest that we're hearing from a rebel spokesman in Benghazi is that they're saying they wouldn't want any combat troops to help them on the battlefield. However, what they do want is international forces who could possibly shield international aid convoys, international aid ships, and protect those from the dangers that they're facing right now. Of course, one of the biggest dangers that they're facing right now is getting shelled when they go into the port of Tripoli. But certainly what we're getting from the rebels, the latest is that they say, yes, they want these advisors. These advisors are going to work with the opposition. They're going to try and make the opposition a more coherent fighting force. They're going to teach them the strategy and also the way to move on the battlefield. However, they're not going to fight on the battlefield. They're probably not going to accompany those forces onto the fight against Muammar Gaddafi's forces. And so far, it seems as though this is still very far away from ground troops, NATO ground troops, actually getting involved in Libya, Monita.
Fred, I just want to pick up on what you just said there, that the aim of these British advisors, military advisors, is to hopefully get the opposition to become a coherent fighting force. As it stands right now, I'm assuming that this opposition group is one that isn't really one that is a group that's intact with the same kind of means and same kind of goals, because it seems as though there are many different people who don't have this one leader or one particular group to really hold on to.
Well, their main problem is that many of them don't have any military training whatsoever, and that certainly has been showing on the battlefield, both in the Eastern Front as well as in Misrata. It's a little less so in Misrata, because Misrata is really not your classic sort of a turf war. It's more of an urban guerrilla war, which is something that is very difficult to train for anyway. But it is true that, yes, many of these people are led by people who have no military experience. Many of them obviously don't have any military experience in and of themselves. They do have sort of a military leadership that tries to keep track of what they do and that tries to sort of divulge some sort of strategy on the battlefield. But there is, of course, a certain way that you need to try and move when you're in a battlefield situation, that you don't just storm forward into the artillery fire of the enemy, for instance, that you try and keep a sort of coherent formation as you're doing this. So certainly from that perspective, there is still a lot of catching up that the rebels would have to do. And then, of course, a lot of them have never been trained on the weapons that they use, things like the sort of fundamental use of rifles, of rocket-propelled grenades. They also have a lot of weapons that they've actually manufactured themselves, where they've taken pods off helicopters and mounted them to the back of trucks. So trying to get all of that organized, trying to get some of those new weapons that the rebels are receiving, for instance, from Qatar, trying to get those into effective use, those would be the kind of things that these military advisors would conduct there.